Pablo Escobar's time in La Catedral was unlike any prison sentence in history. Known as the luxury prison, this fortress-like compound in the hills of Medellín was built to Escobar's own demands. Welcome. I don't know where you are right now. Maybe you're lying in bed, resting after a long day. Perhaps your eyes are already heavy, and your thoughts are drifting. Wherever you are, I'm glad you're here. Tonight, we'll journey together into a curious corner of history. The story of a prison unlike almost any other. This prison was not built to break its inmates. It was built to shelter one of the most powerful and dangerous men in modern history. Pablo Escobar, the infamous Colombian drug lord. His so-called prison, La Catedral, stood high in the hills above me. From a distance, it resembled a monastery more than a jail. There were soccer fields, private rooms, gourmet meals, even a bar. But beneath the surface of this strange retreat, there lingered danger, tension, and hidden truths. Over the next hours, we'll explore this world slowly and gently. We'll imagine what it would have been like to wake up inside We'll step through the story of Escobar himself and the years he spent within its walls. We'll uncover mysteries of hidden tunnels, and we'll contrast this unusual arrangement with the grim reality faced by ordinary prisoners in Colombia. So, make yourself comfortable. You don't need to stay awake for all of it. Let your mind wander if it wishes. History, after all, is best absorbed like a quiet lullaby, soft, steady, and unhurried. Let's begin. Imagine waking up, not in a cramped, overcrowded cell, but in a spacious room with a private bed. The sheets are clean, the air is fresh, and through your window you can glimpse the green hills surrounding me. This is La Catedral, a prison that feels almost like a private estate. But make no mistake, survival here is not simple. The rhythm of daily life begins slowly. Guards outside answered not to the government, but to Pablo Escobar himself. Breakfast might include eggs, fresh fruit, and hot coffee, far removed from the tasteless porridge served in ordinary prisons. Yet even as you sip, you are aware. You are living under the shadow of a man who rules everything. The day stretches on. You may wander the grounds, playing soccer on a field Escobar had built. You might join others in a billiard hall, or simply lounge in the sun. There are visitors, friends, allies, and associates who come freely, as if this were not a prison at all, but a retreat. But beneath the surface, tension hums like a low note. Every guard is loyal to Escobar, not the state. Every visitor brings whispers of business, threats, and rivalries. A simple glance in the wrong direction might earn suspicion. In La Catedral, you are free, and yet never free. Every comfort comes at a cost, obedience to the man who rules. You cannot leave. You cannot disobey. The nights here are deceptive. They are quiet, filled with the sounds of crickets and the wind through the hills. But even as you lay your head down, you know that danger lurks in every corner. Reefer cartels, government betrayal, or Escobar's own unpredictable wrath could shift the balance. To survive a day here is not a matter of enduring hunger or cold, as in other prisons. It is about living under constant pressure, the weight of power condensed into one man's will. And for most people, that weight would be unbearable. Not to the clang of iron bars or the shouts of guards, not to the stench of sweat and concrete that fills most prisons. Instead, you awaken in a small, private room. The sheets beneath you are clean. The pillow is soft enough to surprise you. You sit up, and for a moment you forget this is meant to be a prison at all. The air drifting through the window is cool and fresh. Medellín lies far below, hidden in morning mist. Birds sing in the hills, their voices carrying over the silence of dawn. But then you remember, this is not freedom. This is La Catedral, a prison built for one man, Pablo Escobar. The door is not locked in the way other prison doors are. Guards stand outside, but they are not truly guards of the state. They answer to Escobar himself. They know their duty is not to restrain him, but to protect him, and by extension, you. For you are here only because he allows it. Because every comfort here carries an invisible cost. You step outside after eating. The sun has risen higher, burning away the morning fog. The hills are green and alive, dotted with trees and wildflowers. It looks more like a retreat than a place of punishment. On the field nearby, men are kicking a soccer ball. They laugh, they call out, they move freely. It feels like a summer camp, or perhaps a countryside estate. But listen more closely. Notice how every laugh has an edge to it. Every glance carries weight. Here, you are never just a man at play. You are a piece in Escobar's world, a world balanced on loyalty and fear. Later, you wander into a lounge where others sit around a billiard table. The click of the balls echoes softly. Someone smokes, and a faint scent of tobacco drifts through the air. Conversation flows in low tones about money, about rivals, about matters you realize you should not be hearing. You say little, because in La Catedral woods can be dangerous. The hours of the day stretched long. You may rest, you may read, you may sit outside and look down at Medellín, the city that once trembled under Escobar's control. But there is always a tension, a hum in the air, a reminder that this peace is fragile. At times, Escobar himself may appear. He does not look like a prisoner. He looks like a lord surveying his domain. Men gather around him, listening closely, laughing when he laughs. If he speaks to you, you answer carefully. His mood shapes the air around him. In the evening, there might be music, perhaps a small gathering, drinks poured, voices rising. Some nights there are visitors from outside, friends, family, or business associates. They come and go freely, their presence blurring the line between prison and palace. Yet beneath the music and the laughter, you sense danger, a wrong word, a wrong move, and the mood can shift. Those who displease Escobar do not last long. Night falls. From your window, you see the city lights flickering far below. They look like stars scattered across the valley. The air is cool. The hills quiet. You lie back in your bed, but sleep does not come easily. Because here, in La Catedral, freedom is an illusion. Comfort hides control. Luxury hides fear. And you realize, as the night deepens, surviving a single day in this place would not be easy. Not because of hunger, or cold, or chains, but because of the weight of one man's power pressing silently on every moment, every breath, every choice. This is why you would not last a day in La Catedral. To understand La Catedral, we must understand its master. Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria was not merely an inmate. He was the architect of this prison. In the late 1980s, Escobar's Medellín cartel was one of the most powerful criminal organizations on earth. He controlled the flow of cocaine into the United States and beyond. His fortune was immense. His influence spread across politics, business, and daily life in Colombia. Yet by 1991, pressure mounted. The Colombian government, under threat of U.S. extradition demands, needed to act. Escobar struck a deal. He would surrender, but only on his terms. He would serve his sentence in a prison of his own design, staffed by guards of his choosing, built on land he selected. And so, La Catedral was born. Escobar entered the prison in 1991. For him, incarceration meant little. He lived comfortably, held meetings, and continued to manage cartel affairs. Inmates were few chosen men, loyal lieutenants. His family could visit at will. Politicians, priests, and business associates came and went. Inside La Catedral, Escobar remained the king. But over time, the illusion weakened. Reports leaked of parties with music and women, of business conducted openly within prison walls. It became clear Escobar was not truly confined. When word spread that he had murdered rivals even inside his so-called cell, the government could no longer ignore the farce. In July 1992, fearing his transfer to a real prison, Escobar escaped through the hills. The man who had built his own fortress simply walked out of it, disappearing into the landscape he knew so well. It was not built by the Colombian state in the usual way. It was not designed by engineers to contain criminals. It was born instead out of negotiation. A strange bargain between the government of Colombia and the most feared man in the country, Pablo Escobar. By the late 1980s, Escobar's name carried a kind of power that few individuals have ever held. He was the head of the Medellín cartel, a criminal empire that controlled much of the global cocaine trade. His fortune grew so vast that estimates placed it in the billions of dollars. He was said to spend thousands each month just on rubber bands to wrap stacks of cash. But wealth was not enough. Escobar ruled with violence as well. He declared war on the state when it threatened his empire. Judges, journalists, police officers, many lost their lives in the conflict. Entire neighborhoods felt the weight of his battles. For ordinary Colombians, life in those years was shadowed by fear. Yet by 1991, Escobar faced a difficult choice. Extradition treaties with the United States meant he could be sent north to stand trial, a fate he feared more than prison at home. To prevent this, he struck a deal. He would surrender, but he would do so on his terms. The agreement was unusual. Escobar would serve his sentence in a prison of his own choosing, built to his specifications, guarded by men loyal not to the state but to him. And the government, weary of endless violence, agreed. And so, high in the hills above Medellín, La Catedral was constructed. From the outside, it looked less like a jail and more like a retreat. White walls, red roofs, green fields. It overlooked the valley, offering sweeping views of the city below. Inside, it contained comforts no prisoner should have had: private rooms, billiard tables, even a bar. Escobar entered La Catedral in June of 1991. To the government, it appeared a victory. The most dangerous man in Colombia was behind bars, but in truth, little had changed. Inside, Escobar was master of his domain. He moved freely across the grounds. His family visited often. Associates and allies came and went. Prison guards answered to him. And from within his supposed confinement, he continued to oversee the Medellín cartel. Days inside La Catedral were never ordinary. Meetings took place in spacious rooms where business continued as usual. There were celebrations, birthdays, gatherings, even parties with music and drink. Escobar's lieutenants treated the prison as an extension of their empire. But Escobar himself lived with constant tension. His empire was not secure. Rival cartels in Cali sought to rise. The government, though bound by its bargain, grew uneasy with the stories leaking from the hills. Stories of luxuries, of continued violence, of crimes committed even within prison walls. For Escobar, La Catedral was both fortress and cage. He was safe from extradition. He was safe from assassination attempts that stalked him in Medellín, but he was also surrounded, unable to roam as freely as before. His comfort came with unease, like silk threads that bound rather than liberated. In 1992, rumors grew louder. Escobar had executed 2 of his own men inside La Catedral, rivals accused of betrayal. The government could not ignore this. Officials began to speak of transferring him to a real prison, one outside his control. And Escobar knew what that meant. He had always been a man who planned ahead. He had designed La Catedral with more than luxury in mind. Escape routes were whispered about, tunnels, hidden passages. The hillside itself offered cover for flight. On July 22nd, 1992, the government moved to act. Troops surrounded La Catedral, intending to take Escobar away. But when they entered, he was gone. Escobar had slipped away into the night, vanishing into the hills he knew so well. His prison, his palace, his strange sanctuary, all abandoned in a moment. From there, his story moved toward its end. Months later, hunted by police and rivals alike, Escobar would be found and killed on a rooftop in Medellín. But La Catedral remained a monument to the brief time when a man so powerful could imprison himself on his own terms and call it justice. It is a story of illusion, of confinement that was never confinement, of control that was always fragile, and of a man whose power could bend the structures of law itself. Even today, La Catedral holds mysteries. Some say Escobar, ever cautious, discerned escape routes before he even set foot inside. There are rumors of tunnels dug beneath a hillside, connecting the prison to secret exits. Others whisper of rooms hidden deep in the structure, chambers for meetings, or safekeeping treasures. When Colombian forces eventually entered La Catedral, they found signs of unusual construction, hidden compartments, reinforced walls. Even now, parts of the complex remain shrouded in uncertainty, slowly crumbling under vines and rain. Did Escobar ever truly plan to stay imprisoned? Or was La Catedral from the start just another base in his empire, a fortress disguised as confinement? Exploring these questions draws us into the strange culture of Escobar's world, a blending of criminal power with symbols of religion and family. The prison sat beside a It overlooked the city he once ruled through fear. To some, it symbolized his cunning. To others, it was a grotesque parody of justice. La Catedral was always more than it appeared to be. From the valley below, it looked calm, almost serene. Whitewashed walls against green hillsides. A place of silence where the most feared man in Colombia was said to be contained. But like so many prisons, its walls hid more than they revealed. Even before Escobar's escape, whispers circled in Medellín. People spoke of tunnels running beneath the prison, carved into the earth and stone. They said there were hidden doors that opened into the forest, secret stairways behind walls, even chambers that few ever entered. Some claimed Escobar had designed La Catedral with escape in mind from the very beginning. The same way medieval castles held hidden passages for kings, La Catedral held them for its unlikely ruler. When soldiers stormed the prison in July 1992, they did not find the drug lord, but they did find traces of what the whispers had promised. Empty tunnels, rooms left in disarray, doors swinging open to the cool mountain air. Escobar had walked out as if guided by the earth itself. The mystery of La Catedral did not end there. 4 years after Escobar's death, locals returned to the abandoned site. They described strange feelings, the heavy stillness of rooms where murders had taken place, the unsettling quiet of hallways that had once echoed with music and laughter. Some swore they saw shadows that did not belong to them. Others claimed to hear voices, faint and distant, carried on the mountain wind. Over time, La Catedral began to shift in meaning. To some, it was a scar, a reminder of corruption, of a government forced to compromise with terror. To others, it was a symbol of Escobar's strange genius, his ability to bend reality until even prison became a palace. Archaeologists and journalists who entered later discovered artifacts of that life. Abandoned billiard tables, rusted gym equipment, remnants of a bar. Faded graffiti told stories of loyalty, fear, and humor in the face of confinement. The past clung to the walls like a second skin. In Colombian folklore, places like La Catedral often gain their own legends. Stories of buried treasure are common whispers that Escobar, with his billions, must have hidden gold or cash within the prison grounds. Treasure hunters have dug in secret, searching for caches of money that may never have existed, driven by the idea that wealth beyond measure might still lie buried in those hills. But perhaps the greatest mystery is not treasure, or tunnels, or ghosts. It is the question of how such a place could exist at all. How could one man rewrite the rules so completely that confinement turned to luxury, punishment to privilege? What does it mean for a society when justice bends to power? Walking through La Catedral today, visitors see crumbling walls overtaken by moss and weeds. Some of the site has been repurposed parts are now used by monks who have turned sections into places of reflection and prayer. The air feels quiet, almost cleansing, as if the land itself is slowly reclaiming what was lost. And yet, beneath the silence, the old stories remain. The laughter from Escobar's parties, the tension of whispered betrayal, the sound of footsteps racing through tunnels in the dark. A place that was both fortress and trap, palace and prison. La Catedral is less a building now than a memory. One that refuses to fade. And so, when you hear its name, you do not think only of walls and roofs. You think of the hidden world beneath it, of passages carved in shadow, of riches perhaps buried, of voices that may or may not be real. You think of the blurred line between history and legend. You think of Escobar's prison, which was never truly a prison at all. To understand the strangeness of La Catedral, you must contrast it with the reality faced by ordinary Colombians behind bars. Elsewhere in the country, prisons were overcrowded, suffocating, and brutal. Cells built for 2 might hold 10. Food was scarce, disease spread quickly, and violence was constant. Guards were often underpaid, easily corrupted, and powerless against gangs that controlled entire wings. Now compare that to Escobar's domain. Private rooms, gardens, parties, visits from friends and family. A man who lived as if in a private villa, while across the nation, prisoners struggled for survival in conditions far closer to hell than to comfort. The contrast is stark. It reflects the imbalance of power in Colombia. At that time, a society where wealth and violence could bend even justice itself. For ordinary prisoners, there was no soccer field, no gourmet meal, no view of green hills, only crowded cells, fear, and despair. And yet, even in his luxury, Escobar was not safe. Comfort did not erase the paranoia of betrayal. In the end, his fortress became his trap, forcing him into flight once more. Escobar's prison, perched on the green hills above Medellín, was unlike anything that came before it. He had soccer fields, kitchens where chefs prepared gourmet meals, private rooms for family visits, and the freedom to summon friends and associates. At night, parties spilled into the halls. Music throbbed from speakers, and laughter mixed with the scent of roasted meat and expensive liquor. But only a short distance away, Colombia's ordinary prisons told a different story. Imagine stepping into La Modelo, the notorious penitentiary in Bogota. Here, there were no rolling hills, no peaceful views of the valley. Instead, there were overcrowded barracks, each cell holding far more men than it was meant to. The air was thick with heat, with the press of unwashed clothes, and the exhaustion of men who had nowhere to rest their bodies. Where Escobar's guards obeyed him, prisoners in La Modelo often lived under the rule of gangs. Violence was a constant presence, simmering just below the surface, waiting to erupt. There were no soccer fields with fresh grass, only cracked cement courtyards. No feasts, only thin bowls of soup, bread gone hard at the edges, and rice served in small, meager portions. In La Catedral, Escobar could wander at will, gazing out at the forests he had chosen. In other prisons, men stared at walls so close they could trace every crack with their eyes, day after day. This contrast was more than physical, it was social. Escobar was not just a prisoner. He was a ruler in exile, surrounded by comforts most Colombians could not dream of. For the poor of Medellín, who lived in crowded barrios without electricity or running water, stories of Escobar's prison sounded less like punishment and more like a fairy tale. And yet this fairy tale held shadows. Because inside La Catedral, Escobar's power meant fear. Guests who displeased him did not leave. Associates who betrayed him disappeared within those walls. For his closest circle, privilege and peril walked side by side. Meanwhile, across Colombia, the average inmate endured conditions closer to survival than living. Overcrowding bred disease. Guards, underpaid and overstretched, relied on bribes or turned a blind eye to gang authority. Cells were carved up into invisible territories where newcomers had to pay for safety or risk being swallowed by violence. For some, even the basics, A blanket, a corner to sleep in, a meal unspoiled became luxuries in themselves. To lie in La Catedral was to rest on clean sheets, perhaps in a room with a view. To lie in La Modelo was to curl against cold concrete, with the sounds of shouting or fighting echoing through the night. The gap between these two worlds could not have been wider. It was not only a matter of walls or location. It was a matter of who Escobar was and what he represented. His wealth, his reach, his myth allowed him to turn prison into a palace. For the thousands of nameless inmates across the country, prison remained what it had always been. A test of a place where days blended into nights in a cycle of monotony and struggle. And so, when Colombians looked at La Catedral, they did not see just one prison. They saw a mirror held up to their society. One in which power bought comfort while ordinary men suffered unseen. Today, when visitors climb the hill to what remains of La Catedral, they stand in a place caught between two worlds. Behind them, the ruins of Escobar's playground, crumbling walls, remnants of his strange kingdom. Before them, the wide valley of Medellín, alive with the sounds of a city that has tried to move beyond his shadow. It is a reminder that prisons, like societies, are not equal. They reflect the structures of power outside their walls. For some, incarceration is deprivation. For others, it is merely inconvenient. And as you reflect on this, the silence of La Catedral, the chaos of the unequal weight of punishment, you may feel the rhythm of history slow to a quiet level. The struggles of the past soften into memory, and the contrasts that once defined lives become lessons for those who remain. In the end, La Catedral was never truly a prison. It was a stage upon which power performed its last strange act. And like all stages, when the curtain fell, what remained was only silence.